are live again for Saturday Shares. Thank you for joining us. Let me see here. Just waiting for my special guest to join, and then we will get started. Hang on, join. There you are. Hey, Cher, how are you?
Good.
Good. Oh, I think you cut out for a minute. Can you hear me okay?
Oh no, I can hear you. I can see you.
Perfect.
Are we good?
I can hear you now too. Yeah. Woo!
Yay.
So everybody, this is my friend Cher. We have known each other, I'm gonna say 8 years, because I think Anson was in diapers the first time we met. We met through our husbands, who are great friends and played ball together back in the day. Go Gigi's. And I think it was last month, I'm going to say it was a month ago, you were in town on business. Cher has been on her own infertility journey and has shared with me pretty much the whole journey. But when I met you last month, there was a shift, Cher. I'm going to be honest. Your whole outlook, your perception, how you're feeling about things, it was so admiring, and I was just in awe of how you were able to express what you're going through as you're going through it. Like everyone, Cher is in the middle of her fertility journey and has offered to come on here to speak with us. So I just want to say thank you, first of all. I really appreciate what you're doing. You're so strong. I love you so much. And just let us know where you're at and what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for that intro. I promise you, if you had asked me to do this last year, I'd be like, absolutely not.
100%.
So I'll start. I'm Cher. I have been going through this for probably as long as I've known you, to be honest. But it really started when I was young, like 14, 15. I just had an instinct, and I don't know if it was self-fulfilling prophecy over the years, but when I was basically a teenager, things didn't feel right in my body, and I always wondered if something was going to be a problem. And I always knew that I've been so successful in everything that I've tried to do. I'm a type A person. I've always done really well in school. I've always had good friends. I've always had good relationships. I just had a feeling that this was going to be the one thing that wouldn't go according to plan, that I wouldn't be able to wrangle my way out of. And I had a really interesting background growing up between Jamaica and Miami and Toronto, and just being exposed to so many different cultures. And central to all of that was my family and being surrounded by children. I have like 40 cousins. Everybody has children. To me, it just was always a thing that I was going to have a family. I never even thought twice about it. It was just the only way that we were going to continue having this strong bond. But then when I was about 22, I went to a doctor I was living in Jamaica. I went to her in Jamaica, and she had done some hormone tests and basically said, your fertility is shot. You need to start having children right now. By the time you're 28, it's just going to be nothing. And I was 22, and I was absolutely terrified at that. Like the thought of having a child at 22 years old.
I was going to say, were you thinking about kids at 22 at all?
I mean, I could have thought about it. I was graduated from university. I was living in Jamaica. I hadn't yet gone to law school. So I was like, I guess this could be it, but this isn't it. And so I went down the holistic path just to see, I know there are problems with me internally. I can feel it. So let me start going down that route. And so I started seeing a naturopath that was also a physician who just happened to be Jamaican, but she went through a lot of issues personally, and she traveled around the world, and she actually specialized in treating patients, cancer patients. And so when she was at home in Jamaica, she would treat me. And so she kind of revamped my whole life and changed my diet and changed my approach to, health and nutrition and all of that. And it improved me personally. But, at that point, I wasn't trying to have children. Fast forward to being in a relationship with my husband, who I finally felt like I could have children with. I was in law school, and he is a bit older me, and I had said, can we just wait till I at least have a couple of years out of law school, and then we can start trying. And right when that happened, I immediately went to start, getting hormones tested and just trying to be proactive, being that person to be like, okay, let's, see what's up and let's try and make this happen.
Get everything set. Yep.
Yeah, this is how I achieve things in life, and it's always worked, so this is how I'm going to do it this time. And at the same time, my husband was kind of second guessing whether or not he was even able to or wanted to have children. And so it was really difficult. And I would say for the first, honestly, like 4 or 5 years, it was a fight between us and a battle. And it was, me saying, how did you change your mind about this after, you wanted this for so long and then now you don't, but also knowing that I wasn't getting pregnant naturally. And so I was going, what's that?
Go ahead. I'll ask after your.
Yeah. So I had a fertility clinic in Toronto, and he went, but wasn't really, 100% committed to it. And so it was really me doing this, and it felt like being a single woman doing fertility treatments, but having a partner. It was very strange. We were not connected, and everything felt forced. And so you were going to ask me a question?
So my question was, how did you and Will get through that? Because I know you have a wonderful support of friends and women around you as well. And I remember how difficult that time was when it felt like the two of you were on separate pages. I've never felt that. I don't know how to advise on that. Uche's and I's situation was very different. What can you tell other couples? Like, how did you and Will get back on the same page?
It wasn't easy. And I don't know. For me, it was just, we got to a breaking point, and it was patience. I knew that I was never going to force this, because the last thing I wanted to do was force somebody to go down the path of IVF and infertility treatment when they weren't ready for it. And I knew that from talking to you, and I knew that from talking to so many other people and just doing my research and knowing how emotionally, physically, financially, all of the things, how taxing it.
Yes.
And our relationship wouldn't make it. So what was the relationship or us? And for me, that was a hard one, because the relationship was important, but he also knew that I would never be fully happy and, content with life if we didn't at least try. I knew it wasn't happening now, and I just wanted to try. And my point was, if we try and it doesn't work, then I can say we're good. But the fact that we just left that off the table, and I knew how much of an amazing father he would be, I knew how much he would enjoy doing it. Yeah. There was a lot of fear. And we went through some loss personally. He lost, our collective friend, but one of his mentors and best friends. And I think that really derailed him a bit in terms of just knowing what he wanted. And we got to a point where we were living in Toronto, and everybody was kind of miserable, and he had been wanting to move to LA for work. I was hesitant. My family, my career, everything was at that point in Toronto, because I'd gone to law school and I was practicing. But then we got to a point where I said, you know what? I need to stop controlling this life that we have. And if this is something that's important to you, you make it happen. I'm going to sit back and let that happen, and we'll see what happens. And we talked about children again at that point. And I said, I was concerned about leaving Toronto and mat leave. And I was already planning ahead for something that hadn't even happened. And that's how my brain works. And that's been my problem.
I feel like I am hearing myself talk. For us type A people. Planning is a big thing, and having control gives us less anxiety. When we're not in control, there's a lot of anxiety and worry around us. So when you were finally able to give up control, it seems like that's when things started falling into place.
Right. Last November.
To the date.
That's when it fell into place. And for me, I started to listen to my intuition. And we got on the same page eventually. We moved to LA. We got on to the right page of, agreeing that this is something that we wanted to do. We did one round of IVF, paid out of pocket. Basically, he said, okay, I'm finally ready. Let's do this. And I called, this is again, intuition versus me trying to control. So intuition said, there's this one clinic. They weren't available to meet with me for 2 months.
Okay.
Control, oh, there's this other amazing university affiliated, one of the best in the country clinics. They're available to meet with me. They had a cancellation in 3 weeks. Great, we'll go that path. The second I met with that doctor, I realized how much of an academic he was and how little he was listening to me. But we had started and I didn't know what to do. So I just kind of went through the IVF round knowing that it didn't feel right. And I kept asking him questions that now that I've learned so much about IVF, I knew that those were valid questions, but he kept dismissing me. And it was a battle between me thinking, am I trying to control this and telling this doctor what to do, or am I just listening to my body? That has been hard for me to figure out the two. And so we went through a lot of loss in that round.
Are you comfortable saying how many losses you had?
Yeah, and so that was even a kind of, it was difficult. So we had 4 transfers, and of those transfers, 2 were chemical pregnancies, which are like early stage. I found out I was pregnant, and then shortly, within 3 weeks, found out that I was not.
Right.
And even for that, I was like, does that count? Am I allowed to be like, this is a loss? This is...
Yes, it counts. Yes.
Right. So we went through that, and then we had remaining embryos, and I was trying to, again, wrangle it and figure out a way to get, at that point I had now insurance coverage. We weren't paying out of pocket. And I was trying to figure out, again, the system essentially, to keep what we had, but get more so that we could, adjust the protocol, maybe get some better quality, do testing, etc. And I got to a point where I did feel connected to them, but not in a way that I felt like they were going to result in a live birth. It just felt like they were mine, and I didn't know what to do with them. So we made the decision to release the embryos that we had because they weren't likely to be viable, and both of us knew that after 4 transfers, it was a lot. It was just too emotional to have to go through every time.
So dismissing your embryos, what did you call it?
Releasing.
Thank you. Dismissing, like
So,
kids.
embryo storage.
Now, I know I can only speak on personal experience, and I know when you do the transfers, when you do the egg harvest, when you get your embryos, those are like little pieces of gold that nothing can happen to. It's essentially not only your future child's lifeline, but it really feels like yours. So for you to make the decision to, release those and all of those emotions coming in, how did you feel your chances were? Did you feel like, oh no, this is for the better, we need to do this? Or was it like a mourning process too? Like, was that a loss as well?
It was.
Yeah, okay.
It was. And I knew that, but I knew I needed to do it because I couldn't have both.
Right.
And I just had to trust my intuition and know that regardless of what potentially could have been with those, my body and my intuitive nature is telling me no.
I love that you keep bringing up your intuition and how you felt and your body. And for those who are listening to this, that is some great advice to take away from this, because when you're going through it, mom tuition is a real thing. A woman's intuition is a real thing, and you know your body best. And if anything remotely feels wrong, chances are it is, okay? And I know we have talked a bit about this too, so to segue into the rest of your story, when Uche and I went to our first clinic, it felt wrong, but it was our only option. It was the only clinic where we lived. We felt like we had to do it, but it felt wrong from day one, just like what you were saying. Then you go to another clinic and you realize what things could be like. It's when you're in the right situation, it's really easy to flourish and feel better, and your instincts, not that they go away, but they calm. like you're in the right spot, right? So I would say make sure you're paying attention to what your body is telling you. Cher and I both can attest to that. Your body is your guide. Your gut will never fail you. And if something feels wrong during your process, it probably is. So when yours felt wrong, you decided to, I'm just going to cut ties here, and then you moved elsewhere. Pick up from there.
I moved to the clinic that I had originally wanted to go to that could see me for 3 months.
Years after. So they couldn't see you for 3 months. Is that what you said?
It was only a year at that point because I was with clinics in Toronto, and we moved to LA. There was a bit of a break in between while we worked on ourselves and then decided to move forward. So it was, I think it was like November 2020 that we talked, or maybe it was 2019. I don't remember the years anymore. So
everything collides.
It collides. Yeah, I think it was November 2019 that we started going. And then it was around February 2020 that things started. I don't remember now, but anyway, here we are now in 2022 May. But anyway, so I switched clinics. I went to the doctor that I wanted to go to, and everything kind of worked. At that point, I had to figure out how logistics in America are difficult with insurance. I was grateful to have insurance, but it was a full-time job navigating and figuring out what was actually covered and how much going to be covered, even though I had amazing coverage, which I'm grateful for. And many
so jealous you have coverage, by the way. That's amazing. It's so incredible that there's coverage now for infertility.
Shout out to working in tech. I will give all the props to that. But anyway, so I found out that the clinic I'd originally wanted to was actually perfectly in network with my clinic, and then I had those remaining embryos and was trying to figure out how to move them from the old clinic to the new one, because at that point I hadn't decided to release them yet. And that was like mission impossible, and et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, once I started, as we were figuring that out, my new doctor had said, no problem, we're going to work out all of this, but in the meantime, let's run more tests. And he did everything I had asked my previous doctor to do that was dismissive. And we got results. So we did an ERA, which I think is like an endometrium receptive analysis, where essentially they do a mock cycle and get you to the point of doing a transfer, but they don't do a transfer. They do a biopsy and see if at that moment, were you ready to receive an embryo? And so we did that, and they showed that I wasn't, and that I needed additional days of hormones. Things that I had understood intuitively, but didn't understand them medically to, ask for it. I had a feeling that there was like a time delay. It's called asynchronicity between your uterus and the embryo's development. And those were some of the things that I had figured out just by listening to myself and then working with my new doctor to get the proper medical treatment for it. So
that must have felt amazing to have someone on your side, and you don't feel like you have to advocate so much for yourself, that they're really there to help you get what you are there for. That's great that you found this doctor. I really, at our brunch a month ago when we were talking, like your whole body language, your whole aura, everything has shifted. I mean, you and I have been talking about our infertility journeys for years with each other. And literally after that breakfast, I left with Uche, and I'm like, I am so excited for Cher and Will. I've never seen you in this great a space with it. You've always been really positive, always. And I commend you on that, but something was different about this. So I'm glad that you listened to yourself and knew that you need to switch doctors. Because honestly, once you find your doctor, I don't even know how to describe it. It feels right. It just feels right. Are you open to disclosing where you're at now?
Oh, of course. So we did another round of an egg retrieval, and even that was, a good test of how much calm that we had in this and faith we had in this process at this point, because it wasn't a slam dunk. And I had one really good friend going through it at exactly the same time. She had like 10 perfect embryos, and like 6 of them were genetically, normal, and she got pregnant right away, and it was amazing. And I'm so happy for her. And I was going through it at the same time, and mine were not the best, but I was like, I don't really care at this point, because I got to this point where I understood that there is more to it than just, the doctors doing everything they can. If that was the case, then the success rate would be at 100%. Like, there is something spiritual, there is something going on behind the scenes that we have no control over. And so we got two, and the whole time I had it in the back of my head that we were only going to get exactly what we planned to have, which we only want 2 children. Okay. And 2 genetically normal embryos out of the whole batch. We did testing this time. And so now we are preparing to transfer, and we're going to transfer both of them, because the second we got the report, we both just knew we didn't want to separate them. We wanted to keep them together. And even though understanding that that would mean, potentially putting all of our literal eggs into one basket, and what the outcome could be, afterwards, that we have none left, puts me in high-risk pregnancy territory, all of the risks associated with that, we're very well versed, but it just felt like the right thing to do. So that is what we're gearing up to do in 2 weeks. And we just feel like this is either going to happen or it's not. There is nothing I can do. We've done everything to get to this point. The worst thing that I could do for myself is to sit here and try and hold in all the stress and tension and anxiety, hoping that something works out and thinking that I have any say. I don't at this point. So.
Right. And it's almost like the anticipation of it is worse than the actual moment, I guess I'll say. And I know for me, like, my mind is a powerful thing and it's not always for the positive. So again, I think your outlook with everything is great. I am very impressed with how you have navigated and shifted, and put yourself in the really best possible scenario for this to happen. And I think too, when going through infertility for so long, just to touch on what you said, you reach a point where perfection isn't always what you need. You just need it to work. Like, this was so long ago, so you might actually be able to help me out, Cher. I can't remember the grading system, but Anson was a day 3 embryo. So, and we didn't do all the testing that's now available. So if you were looking at his embryo on the piece of paper or the grading scale, his probably wouldn't have looked that good, and yet we had a totally healthy pregnancy and an amazing 9-year-old boy right now. So I love that you've been able to just kind of take a step back and really look at your situation, and be practical and honest and true to yourself about it. I really, really respect that. Before we go, we'll wrap this up soon, but what advice can you give other women and couples who, you touched on a lot of important parts. Maybe when your spouse and you aren't on board, feelings, and if it's not right, you shouldn't be in that clinic, and then letting go of control. You touched on a lot. You've done a lot of growth. So what advice can you give to other women and couples and men who are in it right now? Like, you're in it and you're sitting here talking to us and opening up, and I'm so happy you're doing this because there's no way I would have been able to do it, and a lot of people can't.
I know.
What advice could you give going, for people in it, in the same position that you're in right now?
I mean, just respect yourself and where you are in the process. There's no magical word. Everybody throughout all of the years kept telling me, you just need to relax. And I knew that. You can't try to relax.
No.
And you have to go through it. And I think that's the biggest advice I can say is just trust that your process is going to be your process. Your journey is going to be yours. It's not going to look like the 4 people in front of you, and that's okay. And just have a little bit of faith that, there is a little more happening behind the scenes than we all know. And I'm not even talking about, I'm not a particularly religious person, but I just got to a point where I realized that there's no rhyme or reason why this does or doesn't work. So let's just try to make ourselves feel the best that we can, because that is the only thing I can control, is how I feel and where my mind is and my mindset, and really just focus on yourself, your partner, get to that place where you're happy and you don't need anything. You're good with where you are, but you want, and you're available, and you're open to, whatever it is that comes, whether it be 1, 2, however many children that come through. Maybe sometimes for some people it's none, and then they go down different paths, but just being open to that is it.
I love it. Great advice. Well, again, I wanted to thank you for your time and being here. I wish we lived closer so that we could just hop into the pool together right now or something. But I'm sure we will see each other again soon, and good luck on your next transfer. You know that we're rooting for you so huge over here. And then we will be in touch. Have a great day, Cher. Love you.
Love you.
Hey, it's Serena. We are live.